got John McMullen Jody McDonald, and there he is, Ed Kracz. Looks like he's ready to get his season going. Looks like he's been pumping iron all off season. What are you tipping the scales at now, Kracz?
I don't know. Is that in my non-disclosure agreement?
Yeah, non-disclosure, but you got to stay at a certain weight, or
right.
Nick Sirianni's going to be upset by it.
How
many times can you get up to 225? That's the key.
Well, I'm
going to go 25 for Ed Kracz.
20. Okay, all right. Well, maybe we can talk him into letting us use the weight room today. I could certainly use the workout.
All right, so it's been a while since you got to see an Eagle practice. You're going to get to go over there today. It's going to be limited. I understand that they're not going to be divulging anything, and you guys are allowed to stay the whole practice, but only tape or record so much of it. What are you going to learn today, Ed Kracz? Is there anything specific you're looking for that you go, all right, at least if I take away this today, I've got some useful information?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I don't expect them to go for more than probably an hour. John, what do you think?
I say hour. That's the over-under.
Yeah.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 54 minutes I'm going with.
There won't be anything as revealing as when we saw Devontae Smith's legs for the first time when he was a rookie a couple years back. Remember?
Yeah, that was
two toothpicks that he was walking around on. But that was the biggest surprise to me when they drafted him. I was really concerned about his size, but man, that guy has held up, one of the top receivers in the league. And now he has his, second or third annual softball?
Allentown, Coca-Cola Park, I believe, is what it's called up there.
I saw the rosters for both teams. It's a good job by Devontae putting that together.
Yeah, I wish it was in Philly. That's a long haul. I'm not going up to Allentown. But, there's no access really. So, unfortunately, it's not all that worth it for reporters. But it's a fun time.
Yeah.
Good charity.
Absolutely.
If you're in the area, you should certainly make an effort to go out there and see Devontae and friends. But yeah, you're right. You bring up, boy, he's a really good player. I mean, what's striking, he is small, but he's weird. He's so long and he's got big hands and he's way more powerful than his frame would lead on to. He's really a unique player. But since you brought up receivers, I'll go to wide receiver 3. And I kind of look at it this way, Ed. I think everybody's obsessed with that label. I don't think the label's important as the role. And they might sort of go back and forth to toggle, Olamide, Zaccheaus might be if they need a slot guy, if they need an outside guy, be more Quez. Maybe even Dan Arnold, Grant Calcaterra, depending on who seizes that sort of second receiving tight end role. We know Jack Stoll's going to be the second tight end. But I think my point is you can go about it a lot of different ways, but I think everybody's obsessed with who's wide receiver 3. Maybe they piecemeal it, or am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. I mean, to me, the receiver group is a little thin. After Brown and Smith, you have Quez. You can't discount Quez. They like Quez. I know fans are disappointed in Quez for, dropping that big catch in the Super Bowl and, some inconsistencies throughout the season, not fighting for the ball and a couple throws from Gardner Minshew, and Minshew was in there. But, to get back to Jody's question a little bit, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how Olamide, Zaccheaus looks, running routes. And, we'll see that, probably against air, maybe some one-on-one drills. But I'm looking forward to seeing how he does, because I think he could have a real role in this offense. I know Zach Pascal was brought in for that last year, never really developed. He made a couple, clutch catches for first downs last year, but more of a blocking role for Zach Pascal. But I'm interested to see how Olamide Zaccheaus does, today with OTAs and next week as well, seeing how he integrates himself into the offense and what Sirianni and Brian Johnson's plans are for him. But it's interesting you mentioned Dan Arnold and maybe Grant Calcaterra as receivers. I mean, maybe you do line those guys up a little bit on the perimeter, on the outside or in the slot, and use them as your so-called wide receiver 3 in some subset packages. So the receiver group to me is one of the weaker, or thinnest groups on the team.
Top heavy. It's great at the top.
Right. Very top heavy.
Yeah.
But, and even to getting back to Jody's question about what I'm looking for is I'm really excited to see Nakobe Dean, how he moves in this defense, how he takes control of this defense, see what kind of a leader he is. Jordan Davis last year when he got drafted, and then Nakobe Dean got drafted in the 3rd round, Davis said he was the commander of that Georgia defense that won their first of 2 national championships. So I'm really interested to see how, he kind of operates this defense, how comfortable he is, how he is as a leader, if he's exerting himself vocally, pointing things out, when the defense is on the field. So that to me, and linebacker like receiver to me is a pretty thin group after him and Nick Morrow, who we're not really sure, what Nicholas Morrow looks like. We haven't seen him. Signed as a free agent, was, a good player for the Bears last year. But after that, it's pretty thin. And, that's an interesting group to keep an eye on as well.
Is there any doubt in either you two guys' heads that Nakobe Dean's getting a dot on his helmet?
No doubts. I'm 100% on that. I might be 110%. I might make up a number.
For a guy who played 32 snaps last year, so that tells you
34. Jody, don't undersell.
Don't chase Nakobe. He had the 34 snaps.
So you had like 13 tackles in the 34 snaps too. Yeah. Very instinctive player. Very smart.
Who else would you give the green dot to? I mean, last year I thought maybe Marcus Epps had a shot as a safety. He was never going to leave the field. He never did leave the field. He's a smart player, had been in the defense a couple of years, but we all know it was TJ Edwards that wore that dot. But I don't know who else you would give it to if not.
No, because you don't even have, some teams do give it to a safety now, which is, sort of the new age NFL. But as you mentioned, Marcus is gone, and now you have Reed Blankenship, who's a 2nd-year player who, got a decent amount of playing time, but not a ton. Still a small sample size. You have Terrell Edmonds, who wasn't even here, and you have a rookie in Cindy Brown. So, I mean, to me, it's 110%. It's right. Nakobe. The only other option could be Nicholas Morrow, and Nicholas could do it. He's played middle linebacker before. He's played Mike linebacker. He has done it when Roquan Smith left Chicago. But I don't think the Eagles want him out there at 100% of the time. I think they're looking for an upgrade. They might get an upgrade at some point. Nakobe's going to be there. He's going to play. He's smart just from, his engineering background at Georgia and his GPA. I mean, he's going to be the leader of that defense. And that might be the biggest story of the year, to be honest, because that's a lot on a young kid's plate that Jody points out barely played last year.
Yeah, and then you look at the defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, his first time in that role for the Eagles. And, what's that relationship going to be like between Desai and Nakobe? I mean, when you talk about OTAs, you think, well, there's not a lot you can learn or, just from a reporting standpoint, we're only there probably for an hour today and maybe an hour next week watching. But I think once these guys start putting some things on tape, the Eagles have tape, cameras all over the field, videoing whatever's going on that field. It's important for some of these players for sure. And the Eagles are going to be watching very closely these tapes that, these players are putting out there. And Nakobe's certainly going to be one. Nicholas Morrow is another, and they'll probably make some decisions based on these couple of weeks of OTAs, exactly what they need to do, what Howie needs to do going into the summer. Certainly that linebacker position needs to be, addressed perhaps. I mean, they need more to me. I mean, Christian Ellis was a nice story last year coming in and helping fortify that special teams unit, but is he a full-time linebacker or a good reserve to have? Sean Bradley's coming off of an injury. Maybe he's the guy that can be that third linebacker. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how often they keep Morrow on the field and in what packages they use him. I mean, Edwards and White rarely came off the field last year as the two linebackers.
Yeah.
So
they lost over. The number was astronomical. It was like, because they were all healthy. They were both healthy for all 20 games. They lost like 2,300 defensive snaps at linebacker. It's crazy how much those guys were on the field, and now they're not here. So, yeah.
All right, Ed Kracz, here's you make the call. The Eagles lost two significant players to free agency this offseason. Which was the bigger loss? Javon Hargrave or Isaac Seumalo?
I'm going to probably say Seumalo. Just because, Hargrave's a big loss, don't get me wrong, but I think the Eagles did a nice job, rebuilding that defensive tackle room. Back-to-back years they've gone with D tackle in the first round, Jordan Davis, and then Jalen Carter, who, by all accounts has looked pretty good, here in May. But I think they've done a good job, and I think they have a good rotation with Cox, Carter, Davis, Milton Williams, and then you bring in Kentavious Street from off the street in New Orleans. We'll see how he does. You have Marlon Tuipulotu coming back. Hargrave's a big loss, but I think they've done a good job, filling in for that loss of Hargrave. But Seumalo, to me, and Jason Kelce said it is, we'll never be able to replace Isaac Seumalo. Now they're going to have to, obviously. And Cam Jurgens was a center at Nebraska for his entire career. He was a center. We say, oh, just go over to guard. It's always not that. It's not that easy to just make that transition from center to guard. Landon Dickerson did a nice job with that, and maybe Jeff Stoutland can, get the same result with Cam Jurgens. But to me, it's kind of a risk. He's a little on the shorter side for a guard. The Eagles like big guards. He's only about 6'3", maybe, but a little on the lighter side. And then you bring in Tyler Steen. And don't forget about Jack Driscoll. I mean, Jack Driscoll is kind of probably the backup tackle at this point, both ways, both sides for Mulata and Lane. But he's a guard to me in the NFL. I think his better position is guard. So maybe the Eagles try to put Jack Driscoll in that spot. But that's a position that, to me, is more concerning than Javon Hargrave, where they've done a good job bringing in some replacements for Hargrave on the defensive line.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ed. I look at it this way. Javon Hargrave's a great player. I'm like you. Don't get me wrong. They brought in a more talented player than Javon Hargrave. That's how high I am on Jalen Carter. Now, I don't think he's going to be as good as a rookie. It's going to take a while, but probably next year by this time, as long as he stays, matures a little bit and stays out of trouble off the field, you're going to forget about Javon Hargrave real quick. I don't know if that's the case with Isaac Seumalo, but I will say, it's a luxury, whether it's Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, Jack Driscoll, it's a luxury to play between Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. So those guys are going to help out. Ultimately, I think they're going to be fine at right guard. But man, they got a superstar talent at defensive tackle. They don't have that at right guard. So that's kind of why I'm not as concerned. If Jalen Carter fails, it's because of off the field stuff. He's too good. He's too talented. Yeah. He's one of the most talented players this team has brought in a long time, because they're usually pretty good. So they're not usually at the top of the draft. And then he fell a little bit to number 9 because of the issues. That's the only reason he was at 9. So you're talking about a top 5 level talent. What do you got? We were talking about that yesterday, Jody. When's the last time they had a top 5 level talent? Carson Wentz, Donovan McNabb.
Carson. Yeah, I think that was an overdraft, and I think I said it then, and I feel I've been proven correct over the years. So if it's not Carson, well, yeah, you got to go all the way back to Donovan if they got a top 5 level guy in the draft.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate argument. Carson and Jared Goff probably got pushed up a little bit because of the position, they were probably not top 5 talents. Donovan was. That might be the last time they had that kind of talent in the building.
Lane Johnson was
Lane Johnson.
Lane
Lane was number 4.
And
you're right.
That guy's been tremendous day one.
Right, because we were talking about hype, and offensive linemen just don't get hype. So that's why you forgot about Lane. You're right. He's a top 5 level talent, but defensive linemen, quarterbacks, oh yeah, you take one of those guys, one of those positions, the hype comes with it. And Jalen Carter is probably going to get that kind of hype from not only the Eagles and the Eagles media and the Eagles fans, but I think nationally as well.
I know, John, you think he'll be better next year than this year. I agree. I think he's going to, but I think this year he's going to make a big impact.
Oh, I think he's going to make an impact.
I think he could be in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year, to be honest. I mean, if he's got all this talent and he's going to have a lot of opportunity, to me, he's going to start next to Fletcher Cox, when they're in that 4-3. Alignment. And to me, I think he's just going to take over games. I mean, he can stop the run, which is something to me this defense needs to do better. From last year, they were middle of the pack in run defense, I think 15th or 16th overall. Carter can stop the run, and I think he's going to develop, some pass rush moves that'll make him even more effective. When you watch tape of Jalen Carter, he is so quick to diagnose things off of the line, and as soon as the ball is snapped, to me, I don't see how he can't make a difference this year, because he's going to have the opportunity, and he's good. He certainly has the talent. So, I expect a Defensive Rookie of the Year season from Jalen Carter.
Yeah, and the beauty of coming in here, and Jody just mentioned Bucky Brooks rated, what was the Eagles' defensive line? Was it
number one
overall?
The
best
all of
unit
football.
in all of football. I don't know if I'd go that high, but it's a really good unit. And that's the deal. You can't show up and say, we're going to double team Jalen Carter, because if you're in that 40 front, it's most likely going to be Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, or Brandon Graham. Maybe they kick Brandon inside, and Jalen Carter. If you double team Jalen Carter, Hassan Reddick's going to kill you. If you double team Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat's going to kill you. On and on and on and on. I agree. He's going to be impactful right away.
And I do think, I agree with Bucky Brooks. I think it is the best defensive front in football. I don't know who would be, in the conversation.
Well, he says it's the best unit in football, like any unit.
Offense,
I think the
defense,
Eagles' offensive line
unit
is still better than the Eagles. Eagles' offensive line is still the best unit on this team. I understand they took some hits depth-wise, and with Isaac a starter is a significant hit. Andre Dillard, significant hit from a depth standpoint. Mm-hmm. But you still got 4 potential all-pro players, not Pro Bowl, all-pro players. That's pretty stinking good with Johnson, Kelsey, Dickerson, Mailata. I mean, that to me is still the best group.
Yeah.
Except for the Detroit Lions, who we had ranked higher as the number one offensive line.
The lines are really good, offensive line. Not as good as the Eagles.
Probably not as proven as the Eagles. The Eagles probably, proven themselves a little more on a man-to-man basis.
I mean, Penei Sewell's a really good player, and maybe he does get better and takes that next step. Frank Ragnow, I've talked for years, really good, but he's hurt a lot. How many games has Jason Kelsey played in a row now, Ed? I forget the number.
I always have to look that up. I think it's 141, somewhere in that.
I think it's above that. I think we're in the 160s, but I could be off. I haven't looked at it in a while.
I can say that it's been since the middle of 2014 that he hasn't missed a start. I mean, so, go ahead and do the math if you want. I think it was he missed maybe 4 games in the middle of the 2014 season and hasn't missed a start since, which
we'll bring up our buddy,
amazing,
our buddy Chip Kelly, and rest in peace, Bill McGovern. But best ability is availability. Ragnow's a great player, but he's always hurt. Kelsey's always out there. That's part of it. That's part of it.
All right, this is a question that I'd love to get answered today. Have you guys, Johnny will be here tomorrow. be able to answer. But here's the answer to the question, Joe. There's a good chance we're not going to have it answered till December, and it may even be longer than that.
Oof.
The Eagles have a stable of running backs. And much like with the defense we were talking earlier, we expect it to be the same. There'll be little changes because Sean decides in and Gannon's out. But basically, it's going to be the same. And I look for the Eagles to keep the same usage of their running backs, even though there's been a change in offensive coordinator. Maybe Brian Johnson handles a little bit more differently, but it is still Nick Sirianni's offense. If that's the case, if they go, hey, we're a great offense last year, here's how we broke it out, here's how we used our running backs, we want someone to replace Miles Sanders. And they're going to use that person like they did Miles Sanders, and everyone else is going to fill their role around it. Who's going to be Miles Sanders in this year's offense, Ed Kracz?
I think number 0 is going to be is 0 a number? I guess it is.
Yeah, it's a number.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be 0. DeAndre Swift. I think he's going to be the lead back of this team. Just because he can do so much. He can catch, he can run. I know Rashad Penny's here, hasn't been able to stay healthy, and maybe that's kind of part of this plan is they kind of, they don't give him that heavy load that maybe he carried in Seattle, try to keep him healthy for 17 games. And I just think DeAndre Swift is so talented and so good at being versatile that it's going to be DeAndre Swift's it's going to be him. I think he's the guy that replaces Miles Sanders, but it's nice to have pieces like Rashad Penny and Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott to a degree when they play the Giants. But DeAndre Swift to me is a guy that you can throw the ball to. And I know they have good receiving weapons on this team, but it's also nice to be able to use your running backs out of the backfield, maybe run wheel routes, get them open in the flat and let them create. And to me, he's probably going to be, weapon number 3 or 4 for this team in the pass game.
All right. My first bold prediction. Everybody's going to be excited. First time the Eagles line up in team drills. Who is the running back 1? Who's going to get the first rep? My bold prediction, Ed Kracz, it's not DeAndre Swift. It's not Rashad Penny. The Eagles will defer to Kenny Gainwell. He will get the first rep as the running back because he's been here. And it's going to mean nothing, but people are going to make a big, big deal out of it. That is my first bold prediction of June 1st. Happy opening OTA for reporters, at least. But in that same vein, I'm not as sure at safety. When they roll out the safeties, is it going to be Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds? Are they going to throw Sidney Brown into the deep end of the pool? What is it going to be at safety when they line up for the first time?
Yeah, you have to be careful with the Eagles show. They do like to pander a bit to, the reporters that are watching. They don't really.
Does Team Pander? Nah.
Yeah, they show us things that that don't necessarily mean a whole lot. They're just kind of giving us different looks, so we can go back and write about it, and then they can look at it and read all about it
and
get
laugh about
laughs.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you got to be careful. If it's Kenny Gainwell, right, at running back, I wouldn't read too much into it. But the safety is that's a good question. I mean, I don't know that much about Sidney Brown. I've since watched a little bit of film on him since they drafted him out of Illinois. And the guy is just so instinctive and so aggressive. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do with this on this defense. I think he could be a starter before this season's over, whether or not it's day one, whether or not it's today, when they send the defense out there. Is he going to be lined up with the starters? I don't think so. If he is, then, that might be something that, we can take away from this. But it's interesting because the Eagles didn't get a lot from their draft picks last year. But I think, with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and Sidney Brown, those 3 guys, I think, are going to play a lot of snaps this year. I really do, in some configuration. I think they're going to get a lot of reps out of those guys. And I like Sidney Brown. I like the way he plays. I think, I've seen people talking, he could be Brian Dawkins. We've heard that with Kayvon Wallace because he came from Clemson. He could be Brian Dawkins. Never really happened for Kayvon, 4th-round pick. Sidney's a 3rd. But, I just like his demeanor. I like when we met him. I like the way he talked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's really impressive. He was a Red Star player, as
Red Star player.
Red Star player.
Right.
And, people made a big deal out of Budda Baker when he sort of intimated he wanted out like everybody else of Arizona. Little birdie told me the Eagles see a lot of Budda Baker and Sidney Brown. So maybe you turn the page on Budda and that $17 million salary, but maybe you get a similar player. Now that's pie in the sky, but they think he can do a lot of different things like Budda Baker. And he did. He played at Illinois. He played in the box, but he's really athletic, and they project him as the post safety because that's what they do. He's going to be. He might be the most interesting rookie from the perspective of. I know Carter's awesome. I know that.
Right.
I'm not as. Nolan Smith is blocked a little bit. Let's be honest, because Hassan's going to be out there. Josh Sweat's going to be out there. Brandon's going to be out there. So I think he's going to be fine. Talk about impressive people. Nolan Smith is an impressive guy. But I think he's got more of a ramp-up period like last year, as you brought up. Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean. I think they can afford to slow play it with him. They need Carter and Brown to play right away. And I think Brown's going to play right away. I'm with you. I don't know if it's going to be day one, but he's going to play a lot. And unless he, what's the bed, he's going to be very, in many ways, the most intriguing player in this draft.
The best news about Brown is, okay, maybe it's not day one for him, but they've got him for 4 years, right, on his rookie contract. And that's a position where they need some cheap labor. The price of safeties has really risen dramatically. And to be able to have a player like Brown, and if developed properly, which I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, if he can stay healthy. I mean, this is a guy now that you have for 4 years under control on a 3rd-round rookie contract. I mean, that's the best news of all about Sidney Brown, is I think he's going to outplay that rookie contract over the course of his time here in Philadelphia. And as far as Smith goes, I kind of disagree a little bit. I just think Brandon Graham's a 20-snap player. Derek Barnett's coming back. I don't know what he's going to have. I know June 1st, his contract, maybe they could move on from him. It's a little cheaper to do so. I don't think they will, because again, that edge spot is somewhere where they need some depth. And I think with Graham playing 20 snaps, maybe Barnett plays 10 snaps. I think Nolan Smith is going to be playing more snaps than people think, just based on him probably being the 3rd or 4th defensive end or edge rush or whatever you want to call him on this team. And he's a guy that can play some linebacker too. He can cover for you as well. So I think that versatility that he brings is going to give him more snaps than maybe people think.
All right, so you hedged pretty well there. I'm going to tie you down here, Ed Kracz. Derek Barnett's role this year, here, there, everywhere. What's going to happen with Derek Barnett if he is a guy who you say they don't need because Smith's ready to step in and start, or no, they want to go cautiously with Smith, as John suggested, they can go slow because they've got options. How does Derek Barnett fit into all of this?
Well, I guess it's going to depend a lot on the health of the knee. I know he tore his ACL in the opener last year, so it's been a good while since, he's had the surgery and he's been through rehab. But, he's a guy that relies on that bend and that explosion off the edge. And, it always takes that. They always say that ACL, it takes a year before it's 100% again. So I guess the health of the knee and how effective he can be is going to dictate that. But he's a guy that's playing for his football career. This is the last year of his contract. He's 27 years old. I mean, he's still in his prime, but he needs to have the kind of year that's going to entice teams to say, hey, maybe he can help us next year. But I think it's all going to depend on the health of his knee how quickly Nolan Smith develops. But I just think he's more of a, 10 snap a game type player at this point, at least early on, until things start to sort themselves out. But I think Smith is better. He's a better player. He's the future. And I don't see the Eagles kind of blunting that with Derek Barnett kind of gumming up the works.
At Kracz E, make sure you follow Ed on Twitter. He will be down there today. SI.com/NFL/Eagles. The biggest question of all, I think you're ready for this one, Ed. The most important decision of all. Ty Zettner against Aaron Cepas. Aaron Cepas finally has some in-house competition. Is it competition, or is this just, hey, we'll bring in somebody to shut people up and Aaron's still going to be the guy? Do the Eagles even care about punters? Because every time they're plus 50, they're going to go for it anyway. But they should after they saw the Super Bowl. I mean, hey, one bad punt can hurt you pretty badly. And that's kind of what happened with Kadarius Toney. Ty Zettner have a real chance.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think he has a real chance. I mean, they haven't brought in any competition for Cepas since he's been here. I think this will be his third year. And it's nice to bring somebody in, because when Cepas got hurt last year, they were scrambling. They brought in Brett Kern, who really had nothing left in that leg, 17-year career, whatever it was. So now you're getting a look at Zettner. Even if he doesn't win the job, at least you see him, you get to know him. He becomes familiar with the building and whatnot. But I think he's legitimate competition for Aaron Cepas. And, might have to work our way over to the special teams area of the field here today to see exactly how that.
We'll bump into Jimmy Kempski. He'll be there.
Yeah. Yep. With his notebook charting punts and this and that. But yeah, I think it's legit competition. I think Zettner has a chance to wrest the job away from Aaron Cepas.
All right. Maybe the most important question of all. What SPF are you rocking today? Just in case a little.
Oh, that's very important for me.
McMullen's got to be up higher than you. You got at least some color to you, Kracz. But are you going skin protection out there in the sun?
Yeah, I do have, I'm a half Italian. My mother's Italian, so I do have that Italian, that Sicilian.
You got the bucket hat ready to go. It's first hot day. It's been nice. Now it's going to be hot today.
Yes, it is. But I do have a hat, and I always carry the SPF 70.
70, yeah. That's what I have. Neutrogena 70.
Yeah. So I'll definitely be, slathering some of that on the exposed parts, if you will.
Yeah, when you're an old guy, man, you gotta do it. You don't want to get in there with
gotta take care. Exactly right.
Jeff Stoutland told us that story. He had to have his ears clipped. Always wears the bucket hats now.
Yeah,
always.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants the ears clipped.
Yeah. Yikes. This is something we don't need details on. We'll be wrapping this up now. Jeff Stoutland's ears clippings. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Eddie Kracz, always a pleasure, brother. Thanks. We'll be reaching back in a couple of weeks. We'll get you back on. Have a good time standing next to McMullen today.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Kracz, SI, here with us on Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac coming back. Still got an hour and change to play. We got another good guest joining us next hour. That'd be our buddy Damo. Paul Domowitz going to jump aboard here on Birds 365.